Oaks, success isn't just a goal, it's the essence of our vision to expect success. From our community-based services, including in-home support and after-school programs, to our residential treatment programs and foster care services, Oaks touches the lives of children and families in all 99 counties. With your commitment, we will continue to support our communities across the state for many, many years to come. Thank you so much for your support.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Iowa Ideas. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our 9th year for the conference. And Iowa Ideas is an event that explores topics that are important to Iowans. And we are so excited for a great couple of days of discussion on the pressing issues facing our state. A couple of real quick thank yous to get to. The Gazette would like to give some special thanks to our presenting sponsor, ITC Midwest, and also Fort Oaks Family and Children's Service for sponsoring this particular track on human and social services. And you just caught their video, so we thank them as well. Our sponsors support help make the Iowa Ideas discussions free for everybody, as you know. So thank you for joining us. I wanted to let, before we get into it, the people listening to know that you'll be able to submit questions to our panel today by entering them into the Q&A box or in the Zoom chat, and we'll do our best to work those into the conversation. So at any point in today's discussion, a question occurs to you that you'd like to hear something from our panelists, put that in the chat, and we'll do our best to work those in. So today we're going to be discussing the political impact on human and social services and how that is affecting Iowa. I am Aaron Murphy, the Gazette's Des Moines Bureau Chief. Thank you for joining us. And today I am joined by a great group of panelists. So let's start with some introductions and learn more about those panelists and their role and their expertise in this discussion today. We'll start with Ann Duggar. Ann, tell us about yourself, your organization, and the work you do.
Yeah, I am Ann Duggar. I'm the executive director at the Catherine McCauley Center here in Cedar Rapids. We have a pretty nice kind of range of things that we do. We have a large and rigorous adult basic education program, or education services. 95% of the students that we see, the adult students we see, are English language learners. I think last count was they represented about 60 countries in Cedar Rapids, which is pretty impressive. So we teach English as another language, citizenship, conversation classes, digital literacy, you name it. We try to meet that need. And then we have, in talking to you the other day, Aaron, I forgot to say, we have a community garden, we have a food pantry, and then we have our women's services department, which has transitional and supportive housing for women coming out of crisis situations, either homelessness, incarceration, addiction, domestic violence. And until February, we also had a refugee and immigrant services program that resettled refugees here in Iowa, or in Cedar Rapids. So that's what we do. We're pretty busy.
Yeah, I'm sure. Very good. Thank you for that. And Renee Hardiman, let's go to you next. Renee, tell us about you, your organization, and your work.
Good morning. I'm Renee Hartman, President and CEO of Lutheran Services in Iowa. I'm kind of tired after listening to Ann and what all they do. So.
I know, though, that you have a lot, you guys have a lot you're doing as well. So.
We're similar in nature. And so we are a statewide organization serving all 99 counties. And we have a plethora of service lines that we are so proud of. And I'll just rattle through them very quickly. Immigrant and Refugee Services is one of them, one of our bigger divisions that really do everything humanly possible to welcome newcomers and allow them to thrive. We work with people with disabilities and making sure that they are thriving as well and being well taken care of and having goals set to enable them to enhance the quality of their lives. Early childhood is another area, foster care, adoptive care, behavioral health, where we have therapists throughout the state that provides mental health services for those that are in need, those that are on Medicare and Medicaid. We also do folks that want to come to us without that, but just because you don't have lots of money doesn't mean that you don't deserve good, compassionate mental health services care. And then Global Greens, which is a big department of ours that works with entrepreneurial farmers to be able to do what they do best and grow their crops and make money and help their families. So
All
that's in
right.
a nutshell.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Renee.
Mhm.
And our last panelist is Henny Orr. Henny, thank you for joining us today and tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be on the panel with Anne and Renee and hear about their work. My name is Henny Orr. I am a founder and executive director of Refugee and Immigrant Voices in Action, REVA for short. We're an immigrant founded and led organization that is about building leaders and strengthening communities. And we do this by uh, really centering community voices and empowering the community to help themselves. So, sustainable change really comes only when people are empowered to actually have the agency and the ownership and to make decisions for their lives. We do it through several programs. We have an AmeriCorps program called Reba AmeriCorps, and it's a program that's intentional in recruiting and supporting immigrant Americans who serve and grow leadership through service to their own community. And we are statewide. We have usually over 50 members, and 85% of them are speak another language and are first or second generation. We also have Voices for Health. That was a program in which we launched recently. We launched a measles awareness campaign, which reached statewide and over 10 different languages. And the goal of the Voices for Health is using health navigators. Again, how do we build upon the strengths of the community, their assets, provide the opportunities so that they can thrive? So it's the train the trainer community navigator, very similar to community health workers. So we're going out to share information, raise awareness, educate, and then serve and also increase access. We also have a program called Impact Incubator, which is really about strengthening immigrant-led groups. There's a lot of groups that are all volunteer and they're doing their work in their community. How can we help support them? Currently, we're supporting two organizations, Iowa Welcome Network of Johnson County, Me Salud, My Health Iowa, and also three Africans in Iowa. So, and we're helping to strengthen their infrastructure, their capacity. I think so. And then the last one we're doing, I just said three, and I can't. So, is we have a research and evaluation where we're doing community participatory research. We have the CDC and National Institute of Health on specific research projects surrounding immigrants.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. No, thank you. Obviously, there's some great work that y'all do, and we appreciate you all taking time to join us for this discussion today. So as I look at the title of our session, the political impact on human and social services, I kind of wanted to talk from a big picture view, to give folks an understanding of kind of the role your organizations kind of play in that space and maybe some of the challenges. So help us understand, if you could, how does the nonprofit organization not only conduct its mission but also advocate for its mission and its services without being seen as politically partisan? And I'm curious if that can sometimes be a difficult distinction to make, a difficult tightrope to walk. And I'll open this up to at this point to any of y'all to talk about that.
And
Go
you want
for
to
it.
go?
We're being polite to each other,
Yeah.
so go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can start. I do think that each of us are walking kind of a fine line, and sometimes we feel like it's tricky. But I want to say that while we're in the era where the words diversity, equity, and inclusion are somehow taboo, um, we are not going to walk away from that because everything we do is about inclusion. When you talk about newcomers, when you talk about people with disabilities, single moms, and all of those things, it's about inclusion. And so I think you have to stay true to who you are. I think you have to find different ways to share that. You have to really focus on what the impact of your services are, tell those stories about impact. How are you helping the economy with the state of Iowa? How are you protecting lives? And how are you impacting the workforce? So shift from things that people want to hear and use those words and use that language to really kind of elevate your mission. So, but I say here at LSI, we are who we are. We are unapologetically who we are. Inclusion is every part of what we do, but we have to find more strategic ways to share our story and share with the donors and stakeholders about how we are improving lives in the state of Iowa.
And my first thought with this, and I have to agree absolutely with Renee. My first thought was, well, without being seen as politically partisan, that's assuming you don't want to be seen as politically partisan,
Fair
right?
point.
So the like Renee said, and I would bet Henny is the same way. We'll see what she has to say. The mission is the mission. I can't make it less politically partisan, and it is. So then, like Renee said, how do we stand on that? Because there is some integrity to that. We need to also be thinking along the lines of what we stand for and who do we stand for and with. So then how do we tell that story in a way that touches any person who's listening to it? And again, I think that impact on what we're doing for the community actually, and what we're helping our the people we're serving do for the community is the way to kind of move through a lot of really difficult waters.
Right.
Yeah, just Renee and Anne, what they're saying, and building upon that, I think narrative messaging is critically important. The message is centrally very much the same in the sense that we're talking about families, we're talking about individuals and human rights and dignity and respect. And, there's a lot of people who really do support immigrants on both ways. It's just how words have been maybe weaponized in different ways. So how we choose our words have become different and more careful and if the context is different. And in many ways, I think our community is used to kind of stepping in those areas as already and making sure that, sometimes we're code switching, we're looking at how we speak and what we're saying. So messaging has been really important. I think messaging coming from the immigrant community is critically important. And I think it's also with the knowledge that the risk comes with that. And so how do you bring in allies? How do you bring in partnerships, but yet keep the immigrant community and their ideas and voices central? But so
yeah, and that sort of leads perfectly, and I may have even heard, as I hear you all talk about that, the beginnings of an answer to this next question that I had already, but maybe you can expand on it. And the next question I had here was, how do you approach conversations specifically with policymakers, especially when you're talking about either policies or funding that's going to impact your organization and its work? How do you tell, as some of you said, tell that story in a way that, I guess focuses those policymakers on the mission itself and trying to avoid, I assume you want to avoid them thinking about it as a partisan policy discussion versus just something that's going to benefit people in Iowa.
Yeah. I'll share a story that happened to us earlier in the year. At the State House, we were invited to sit down and talk to the International Relations Committee that consisted primarily of folks that, as you know, the majority in the House, and so lots of Republicans. And it was a Republican that asked us to be the speaker and gave us a full hour to tell our story and to bring some refugees or folks that have been through the system to this meeting and share where they're at today and how some of our services have helped them. And it was pretty powerful. We walked in there pretty nervous. I took my director of immigrant and refugee services, Nick Wirtz, who has a phenomenal reputation in this space. And we talked to all of these folks in the room and learned that some of their hearts changed when they heard the humanness of what we do, because it's so stigmatized that they think we're just standing at the border, bringing people over and plopping them into our places and serving them. It's really not that. It's really about helping newcomers that most oftentimes are vetted more than us on this call here, and lifting them up and helping them navigate the waters of a new country. So we put the humanness to the story, the human side to the story, and anybody with a heart will hopefully be touched. Maybe not everybody, but Nunn's office has been to some of our farms. He's sent staff twice to some of our global farms to understand about what these entrepreneur farmers and refugee farmers are doing. So we have.
I'm sorry, Renee. You're saying
Yeah.
Congressman Zach Nunn. You were talking about there. Yep.
His office has been to our global greens farms, and we have to open up what we do to everybody that wants to hear and expose to what we do. So yeah, we can't just talk to who we think might be more favorable. We have to open our doors and walk into spaces where anybody that wants to hear what we have to say, we want to talk with them.
Mhm.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
I know, because I'm curious, because my job is covering government and politics for the Gazette, that our state and country's politics have become more polarized in recent years. I'm wondering if you all have seen that as well, and not necessarily broadly speaking as far as elections or whatever concerned, but does that impact, if you have seen that, does that impact the work that you try to do with policymakers? That has your communication strategies shifted, had to change it all in recent years, as at least anyways, like I said, from my seat, that it seems like things have become more polarized. Have you all seen the same thing, and does that present any unique challenges?
Yes. I of course we've seen the polarization. We're sometimes right at the heart of it, and I think it is a matter of I talk to my board quite a bit about just things that I'm good at, right? So you, like, personally, building those bridges between just common ground. Do you care about your neighbors? Well, okay, then let's talk about that. How do you? So I think I've known people on both sides of this polarization, and when it came down to it, would they help their neighbor in a time of crisis? Absolutely, they would. So sometimes it's a disconnect for people that your day to day isn't the same as your political views, and how to look at that and not change it, but just realize there's space for either way. There's space for some conversation, and I'm thinking about, we have donors and volunteers who do not align politically with me, but they certainly let me know that. And we also have but we do align on, I care about my community. I care about people who are in my community and making sure my community is thriving. So I mean, there's a lot of common ground that we're told we don't have, and we absolutely do.
That's it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that I think that anybody in Iowa probably heard the trials and tribulations that LSI went through at the first of the year. We were called money launderers, or we were roped into this whole notion that we were money launderers, and that happened at the first of the year. And so that we had to pause and figure out a way to untangle that, and figure out a way to let our reputation stand for itself.
Mhm.
But that meant having a tough conversation with the governor personally, of which I did, and explaining about the impact of those kind of conversations, or the impact of not correcting those conversations when in DC. So I have to speak truth to power and lend my voice to protecting my organization in lifting up our great work. And so we did that to the tune of even months later, we're sitting in the governor's office signing a proclamation on the 160 years of us making an impact in this community. So you have to, what Ann said, you have to cross those bridges and you have to figure out strategic ways to walk across that bridge, but still speak truth to power and speak the truth about what you do. So we went on a rampage talking to every media outlet that we can, including you, Aaron.
I remember.
Telling our story. We're going to focus on the positive. So I could dig deep, I can get angry. It does us no good. You have to focus on the positive impact that you're making in this community. That's how you garner more support. That's how you reach more people. But wanted me to get in the huge fight with the governor. What good would that have done me? What good would that have done my agency? Nothing.
I'm ready to follow Renee wherever.
And as just by way, real quick, of background for anyone who's listening and may not remember, this was an incident that started at the national level with a national figure who made the comment that Renee referenced when Governor Reynolds was out in D.C. for a panel on, if I remember, something completely different. The government efficiency task force, and so I encourage you all to go to thegazette.com and do a little search and find our coverage of that. But yeah, that's a great example, Renee. I know I don't want to put you on the spot, so please answer to whatever extent you're comfortable, but I'm curious how much you'd be willing to share, because that was such a unique illustration and example of what we're talking about today. Do you mind if I ask how that conversation went with the governor in the wake of that?
Yeah. And I will share, she called me personally, and she called me on my cell phone, and she asked how we were doing, and she wanted to talk through it. So I have to give her credit for that. She didn't have to do that. And so we just had a discussion about what impact those kind of allegations had on our organization, and what all the extra things that we needed to do to turn that around, and what resources that we had to engage in to turn it around. So I was painfully honest. And I asked her, and when she asked me what she could do, I said, you can share with the world who we are. And to her credit, she did that. She had a press conference and she did just that. And she shared with the community who we are, what we do, the great work what we do. So I think what I learned in all of that is, while I was angry about that allegation that affected our organization, I had to move away from that core visceral reaction of being angry to how can I get on the other side? And I like what Ann said, it's crossing bridges. It's crossing bridges and walking that bridge, but staying true to who you are and moving forward and asking for what you need, and not just disengaging altogether. And that's what got us through it.
There you go. And I wanted to go back to something Ann said. I made a note of here, and Ann, maybe you can expand on this, and then anybody else as well. But I thought I wanted to circle back and highlight when you talked about sort of there, when you get past the politics and just talk to people, there is so much more common ground than people might expect, and especially with the types of services you all provide and the missions of your organizations, that if you ignore people's politics, there's a unity there. And I think that's such a great point to make, Ann, because it kind of gets at the broader discussion we're having here today. And I wanted to reemphasize that in case that wasn't clear. Like that's kind of why I'm asking these questions, is how do you get past all that, noise, for a lack of a better way to put it, and get to make those appeals to those people who, and I'm not surprised to hear you that, Ann, because when I cover some of these issues, and then if you talk to folks outside the political sphere, there is wide support for the kind of things you do, and I don't know if you wanted to expand on that at all.
Well, I think so. For us, just uniquely, we have the women's services arena that we're in, the transitional and supportive housing, right? So not just for immigrants and refugees, but for these women who are coming in from situations, and it's actually, a lot of people know women in their families who have been through these situations, so like touching on those, as Renee said, and again, I think Henny would say too, like these stories that people have, whether they're just from our community, whether they're from a different country, the stories resonate. And the feelings that people have, and the trials and tribulations, and the joys that they have resonate with my neighbor, resonate with your neighbor. Our community actually does, oh, I see them at the grocery store. I didn't know that's what it means when they're confused about what a particular fruit is, or just something like that, where yeah, I was too. I didn't know what that dragon fruit was. What is that, right? So that's the kind of thing that I really try to tap into as much as possible. What do you see is the same within our services, within the strategically undervalued populations that we serve? They're a lot like you, and here's how. So
That's right.
Absolutely. I think, taking the opportunity to have conversations, I think being prepared, like Renee, with intention, and to have a conversation that is about listening and sharing, because it's difficult in this time to not react, and also not just share our stories, but how do you build relationships, which means proximity and interactions, right? And in avenues where we're seen not just as those to care for, but we're the ones who can care and do. We are a tremendous asset of the community. I'm a child of immigrants. I came here from Korea. We know that there are people that need support, but they need support so that they can contribute. This is not something that we're just supporting people so that they can continue to not thrive. We're talking about opportunities and resources. So for our AmeriCorps program, one of the ways we do that is our AmeriCorps members who are throughout the state, they're usually young adults, and they're doing service, and do their service work. They're interacting with many different people, right? You're seeing someone out in the community providing service to the community, which includes the larger community. We're part of MLK Day. We're part of 9/11. We're part of the community. So trying to make sure that we can balance out the fact that human and social services are needed for human beings, so that because they have potential and resources, and then providing the tools and the support so that our community can have these conversations, because it is super tough. And how not to fall into a reactive rage kind of thing, and in the moment to be able to parse your words and understand, get to the meaning. I find very important, to be honest. So
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. I wanted to take a minute really quick. We're roughly just a hair short of about halfway through our discussion. This has been great so far. So much more to talk about. I wanted to remind those listening that in case you joined us late, that feel free to drop a question in the chat, and we will do our best to work those into the conversation as well. You've got three folks with a lot of experience and knowledge in this space, and I don't have all the best questions. So if you thought of something that we haven't yet, drop that in the chat, and we'll do our best to work that in. And it looks like I see from my tech assistant that we might have our first one popping in. So we'll check that out and get to that. I wanted to shift the discussion a little bit to drill down a little bit more specifically on funding, public funding that support your organizations. And I guess I should start with, I hadn't worked this in. If you could just kind of tell us how much your respective organizations rely on federal funding, either directly or grants, et cetera. And then I'm curious to hear if any of you have any examples of when there have been sudden shifts in public funding. And let's be honest, when I say shifts, more often than not, that means a reduction in funding that may have impacted your organization. And it'd be interested to hear how your organization had to adjust or respond to those changes, and what impact that had on the services that you provide, because I think that's always an important story to tell when those kinds of things happen. So I welcome anyone to jump in and take that fun one first.
I'm happy.
Go ahead, Ann.
It's
Yeah.
been my entire year since January. So right now we have a couple of larger funding sources through the state and through the Bureau of Refugee Services for helping with employment and some sort of community engagement and integration classes that we do, and then also for Afghans as well. So, but before January 20th, and I know refugee resettlement affected all of us, the just full shutdown of that. Between January 20th and February 10th, I lost our organization lost, it feels personal, lost half of our budget, fully $2.5 million in federal funding and reimbursement grants and contracts. And went from 50 to 25 employees. We had to let go of that many people in a very short period of time. We knew that there would be a stop of refugee resettlement, but we did not realize that the government would shut down the funding so fast. And it was like on a Friday, and then Monday it was gone. We were told Friday, and Monday it was gone. So we've had a humongous change in how our organization is. It sort of felt for a little while like we were just missing a full limb, and we just didn't know how to walk on one leg, right? So that was really difficult. So for us, that's we've really taken a look at how do we diversify a portfolio that we don't have half our funding reliant on political changes and the political winds. And we've had a lot of healing conversations with staff, and at the same time, two staff members took care of the work of 25 for like 3 months, trying to get over 100 people, get them jobs, get them stabilized, give them, out of our own pockets. We paid the money that the government said that they would pay for this resettlement process, and it just really hurt us, even financially, that we weren't reimbursed any of that money back. So it's been very, very, very difficult, and also like a time to look forward and think about the conversation even that we're having right now about those bridges, about how do we engage people to understand what this means for our community, for the larger American community, if we don't have refugees coming, if we don't take interest and value our immigrant populations as well. So
well, and the Iowan community too, right? And as a state that's had trouble growing its population.
Well, and our history of I mean, we're the reason resettlement started, and not to be proud of that is for me just like, what? Why wouldn't we be proud of doing what we think, what Governor Ray said was a moral obligation? I mean, Iowans, we that resonates with all of us as Iowans. So,
yeah. Renee or Henny, do you have? Thank you first of all for sharing that, and I know that's a tough thing to talk about. Renee or Henny, do you have any similar stories or experiences?
Yeah, we do, and I appreciate Ann lifting up what they went through. I think we all have collective pain because we are all in this space, because we're doing some of the same things, and we care about the state, and we care about newcomers, and we care about people. So LSI is an organization that has about a $33 million budget. And so resettlement services was about $4 million for us. And so when we got what Ann probably is referring to, Henny, stop work order is what it's called. Never seen one before, but when I got it, I remember calling Nick on a Friday night saying, what does this all mean? And we had a very sobering conversation about what that meant. And so we had to get into a mode of truly understanding. At that time, I think we had 192 people that were already under our care. We made a conscious effort not to eliminate positions right away. We made a decision that we were going to resettle each and every one of them. Every one of them was going to be getting their 90 days that they were promised. Regardless, we were going to do this because we could not move away from our mission. and we could not allow newcomers to come into this country. And we said bye-bye after even sometimes 3 to 4 days. So we held steadfast to who we are and what we do. And I'm proud of that department that found everybody jobs. It was a lot of work, but we stood true to them. And we did have to lay off of about 25 of our employees. We have an organization of about 340 employees. So that was a hit, but we did not do it right away. When some organizations cut like that, we held them on, and we gave them dignity and respect, and they got plenty of notice when we might be able to have to cut their position. So we did it in a very humane way. We did not react right away. We said, first and foremost, is mission driven work. Let's stick to these newcomers. Let's stick by their side. Let's do what we need to do. We'll find a way to pay for the services, of which we did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Renee. Henny, I saw you nodding early as well. Sounds like you have a story to share too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely funding cuts, canceled funding, but it's also the shift in support and the framing of how the community we serve and the scrutiny that's put upon us, which leads to a lot of disruptions, right?
Mhm.
Increased audits, focusing on wordsmithing, and not the programming. So with that additional scrutiny and with institutional organizations, whether it be corporate or, foundations and whatnot, everyone is kind of seized up, not sure what to do. But what makes Refugee and Immigrant Voices in Action unique, and we started as a grassroots organization, all volunteer for 3 years, and it started with the community. And we are going to go back to those roots, and because we are working with organizations like I mentioned, Iowa Welcome Network in Johnson County, that supports asylee, refugees, and housing, and that is done with a staff with no paid staff, right? We have Me Salute Iowa, who is going around tabling all across the state, providing diabetes and high blood pressure screenings by Train the Trainer. So what can we do in a grassroots level to organize and help the community who are helping others? That's where we're going back to.
Yeah.
And going to individual people who support the work and getting the message out there, because we can't count on necessarily support from bigger institutions or state or federal. That's never been really the case.
Yeah. That reminds me, Henry, I appreciate that, because that's a good. I'm going to maybe float this out there for the three of you, and we'll circle back to it. For the benefit of those of us listening, I told our panelists that I'll try my best to leave them some time for some closing comments at the end. One of the things we try to include in our Iowa Ideas discussions are not just addressing the challenges and problems, but also providing solutions and ideas, right in the name. So maybe be thinking about that. I'll put out to my group here when we get to those closing comments. What as we look to the future, what are some possible things, and especially for those people listening, what can they do to help, and what are the solutions as we talk about these challenges. Speaking of our listeners, I want to work in the first question we got here, because and I'm going to flatter our listeners. We always get such great questions in these Iowa IDs panels, and to that point, this first one was actually was on my list, so we were going to eventually get to it, but I think I'm going to move it up here, because this is a perfect time, I think, to dovetail off the discussion you just all had about the funding cuts and the impact you have, specifically in the question on your fellow workers. And the listener asked, as nonprofit leaders, how do you keep your employees and team members encouraged and informed when so much is changing so quickly? And when employees are scared and nervous about all the changes taking place. I had kind of framed a question about morale too. I'm sure that's a challenge. Look, I'm in an industry that's had its own financial challenges over the years, so to a certain degree I can empathize. But I'd be curious to hear from many of you how you have to approach those tough conversations, and how you work with your staff in those moments.
Yeah. I think that that's why we are leaders. I think that leaders are called to walk through difficult times. It's easy for us to lead our organizations when everything's going well. So I personally had to dig deep and say, and I was new to this organization. I was like, well, what did I get into? I've been here for 2 years. I'm like, no one told me this. And so I think what we did is that we gave people voices. We actually had going away party for the people that were leaving, and many of them came and they shared their stories. Poems were read. Everybody got up and talked. And so we made it feel as if you are still going to be a part of us. We want to be able to say goodbye in a respectable, dignified way, but we want to give you a voice. So we mourned with our people together. We cried with them together, but we allowed ourselves to lift them up with gratitude and appreciation for many of them, their long service commitment to LSI. We named our struggle unstoppable and still standing. We named it. We named it. And that's who we are this year as we celebrate 160 years. No matter what's going on in our external world, we are humanitarians serving the people. And our theme was unstoppable and still standing. We have t-shirts that have that on. We had a celebration on Friday with 300 of our colleagues, all at Lutheran Church of Hope, all day long celebrating unstoppable and still standing. So, as a leader, we have to lean into spaces that are difficult and challenging, but be at the heart of understanding our people, giving them space to cry. Nick and I have had conversations behind closed doors that have been very challenging. He has seen me cry. I've seen him get a bit emotional because he has so much invested in this. That means we're human, right? That means we're human and we get to do that. And so they want the leader to be human, but yet I have to be strong and say, this too shall pass. It's a moment in time that we're going to get through one step at a time, and we are unstoppable and still standing. And so we named our struggle this year, and that's what guides us through.
I appreciate that, Renee. And just by way of background for those,
Nick Wirtz is the Director of Immigrant and Refugee Services, but I have directors from other areas on the line too. And so, but that's the area that got the most funding.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Anne or Henny, is there, before we move on, I want to give you any opportunity to add to that.
We leaned into transparency and just making sure that everybody had, their questions answered, giving probably more information than anybody wanted, but just to make sure that they kind of understood where we were at. We call it the troubles, like back in the troubles. That's what happened. I mean, I was thinking naming it. That's kind of we named it. It's the troubles. But ours, our kind of internal dialogue has to do with resolve. Is my particular stance on this. I became very resolute in making sure that we were here, that we were that our staff felt safe and protected, and the people that we did have to let go very, very quickly, just because of some other financial issues that we had before that. That they knew it wasn't them, it wasn't their, it wasn't because they did a poor job or anything like that. So it was a very quick thing for us, and it was heart-wrenching. But yeah, the transparency. Also, we do a lot of dancing and singing here because I'm really interested in silliness and in joy. And today I've been talking to everybody going, there's not enough joy in business. So let's make things joyful. So yeah, we do. We're kind of a funny, odd little group of people who love to be silly as well. And it's
gosh, I got to bring that back. I'm going to go to the office and start dancing, and then they're going to be like, "What's the matter with you?"
Hey,
there you go, Renee.
I do it.
I love the naming and putting it in a framework that says we're going to persevere. And I mean that's it. It's transparency, absolutely. It's also the resilience that we find in ourselves and who we serve, right? You go back to where we started. The nature of the work we do is is about resilience and perseverance and resolve. There is no one who has been through more than immigrant refugees coming to this country. So we go and I mean, it's a privilege. It's like, this is our privilege to serve. So what are we going to do to take the next step? Still being mindful of what do we need to do to take care of ourselves. So take time off. It's flexible. What, how do we build that space? But and looking back at the arc of history, I mean, like, this is the struggle, and we're going to make a path forward. We just can't give up. We got to keep going. We got to unstoppable and still standing, right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
but we do it with our community. The ones we serve are also our leaders.
That's great.
Well, I was gonna say too, Henny, that is exactly, it is a privilege. I've told people that too as well. It's a privilege to do this work, and it's an honor to do this work. And we learn every day from the people that we're serving to have that resolve and be unstoppable and still stand. So,
Yeah. I so agree with Henny and Ann. It's a privilege and it's an honor, but it's not easy. And if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But you have to be able, in times of turbulence and uncertainty and chaos, you have to be the anchor. You have to be the anchor that allows yourself to shift through all the noise and focus on all the other things that you're doing and how you can lift those things up.
Yeah, man, that's great stuff. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing. This has been amazing so far. We're probably inside maybe roughly our last 10 minutes or so. I want to throw this question out to you, and we'll come back to it because I want to give you time to think. This is our second listener question, another really good one, but it's one I want to give you time to have kind of rattle around your brain as we roll to the finish here, and not put you on the spot. So the question is, what are you most concerned about looking ahead to the future of human services? And what are you most optimistic about the future of human services? So that's kind of, I think I love that as a towards the closing as well too. So be thinking about that if you can, and give you time to let that rattle around. We'll come back to it. And you mentioned something that kind of leads me into this next question. So I'll start with you on this one. Maybe you can expand it. Is there any way to insulate your organizations to at least a certain degree? Obviously, nothing ever could completely. But are there strategies? Are there ways to insulate your organizations from these swings? From the good times to the more challenging times.
Yeah, I mean, for nonprofit, I mean, not for profits, we're looking at how do you diversify portfolios? How do you make sure your funding streams are stable, and what, looking at trends in the grant cycles and what we got last year versus what we think we can get this year. I mean, there's data that goes along with this, and that's something I'm going to make my, if you haven't seen the uncharitable documentary, you should probably watch that, because we have overhead costs to get this data, to get this stability. We have to get funding for the people to do that. So yeah, there's definitely ways to insulate from those wild swings. I thought you were going to ask, are there ways to insulate from the greater, polarization?
Well, that too. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to.
Yeah.
We've got to have our clients and our students and our residents. For us, we got to have them be able to be in the world and be self-sufficient in that. So you can't insulate. I don't think you should, or we should. But as far as the sort of wildly swinging from day to day, and it is not just, it's not just us. If we're going to go ask a larger corporation for a large donation or sponsorship, we also have to be aware that they're worried because their money is in trouble, and so on and so on and so on. So really thinking about how to and who to talk to there are ways to do this. It is a lot of work, but a lot of very intentional work that we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Ann said it well, and I think that we here at LSI are looking at ways, as Ann is saying, diversifying our portfolio. We have to be we have to rely on federal and state grants. We have big services that we do that are funded by those entities, but we have to look at private donations, private foundations more. We got to take our word out on the streets. We're celebrating 160th anniversary. We're going to have a big event on October 17th. We raised close to $240,000 for that. You know how we're doing it? Taking it to the streets, driving up to Sheffield, Iowa, and getting a $30,000 check from an individual, going to Waverly and getting a $60,000 check from someone right here in Des Moines in our backyard, $50,000 check. We have to take it to the streets. We have to take it to people that care about people and ask them to give, because they want to also make a difference in this time of change and turbulence, and make an impact. So we have to be able to sit down and have more private conversations with individuals, asking their why and how can they invest in the mission of saving lives, uplifting lives. And we have to do that. We have to be less reliant on government as we can. Take it to the streets.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Henny.
Man, I'd like to go take it to the streets with you, Renee. So,
same.
And
I'm ready.
Well, but
let's do stuff.
I think you were mentioning what, good and bad, right? What we're worried about is the mental health of our community, and the trauma that it creates, and the lack of access, and how to services, essential needs that we're cutting people off of. We're defining people and what makes one worthy of something, right? And so that is carried within us. What I find is hopeful is the engagement and the community, that more and more individuals and people are saying, once they hear these messages and they're wanting to say, what can we do? How can we help? And I think that's what's going to turn it. So we got to figure out how we can continue to message and change the narrative together. But bring out those stories, engage people. But the harm that's being done is, I think, it's just really painful right now.
Yeah. And Renee and Henny, you both touched on something that I'm glad you did, because I had made a note here to myself. We're talking so much about the impact of federal policy and funding, but there's another side to this equation, which is the donors, the individual donors that you all work with too. And I was curious to hear, and Renee, you started to talk about it a little bit. I'm just curious, how is that going out there? I hear from other spheres that have had to kind of make that shift as well, and they tell me it's going really well right now, but they're worried, is that sustainable long term? I'd be curious to hear the perspective from your organizations about, Renee, like you talked about having to lean more on the private donations versus the government funding.
Yeah. Well, you have to get it when they give it, okay? And take it when you can, and continue to nurture those relationships. And you have to tell them how their money is making a difference. You can do an impact report, that's great. But it's nothing like sitting in the living room of a donor that's giving you some big time money, and sitting there and asking them questions and sharing with them real life stories about what their dollar's done. So we're going to take it when they give it and celebrate that as they do. But we are going to nurture and steward the heck out of that relationship by engaging them in ways that we can, and by making sure that we are not phoning it in. We cannot phone things in. We have to be out there talking to folks in the streets. When I say in the streets, I mean in their homes, at coffee shops, inviting them here. This phoning it in is not working. It doesn't work. It does in some cases, but nowadays these investors and stakeholders, they want to see you. They want you to tell the stories. They want to be live with you, hearing that your investment matters, because this is what we've done. And that's what we are doing more of, is going out there, having those candid conversations, versus a phone call saying, you gave this amount last year. Would you mind renewing? And da 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 da. Did you see our impact report? Let's go out there and share some meaningful impact stories about how we've done. When we were out there share, we did this too. We had gathering town halls. I mean, we had gratitude town halls. Had one in Waterloo, one in Sioux City, one in Des Moines. We had one in Des Moines, and you guys, I thought we were having a presidential debate with all the media that was here. 5 media outlets that care about how did we survive this crisis. We didn't ask for a dime, but we had gratitude gatherings to tell stakeholders, thank you. Thank you for $5. Thank you for $200,000. Thank you for 75. Thank you for whatever you got. But this is what happened. This is what happened as a result of your investment. So just being creative of how you thank your donors, being creative of how you communicate with them, and not phone it in.
Yeah. That's excellent. We're getting down. We're inside our last 5 minutes, and like I said at the top, I wanted to leave everybody some time for any closing thoughts you had, and then I'm also going to remind you of the question the question that our listener sent in. So I'll give you each a turn here to kind of tackle both, answer the question as much as you like or can, and then any other closing thoughts, anything we didn't cover that you was important to convey here in our last probably about a minute a piece for you here. So again, that question was, what are you most concerned about as you look to the future for human services, and what are you most optimistic about? And again, and any closing thoughts you have beyond that, and we'll go in reverse order this time and start with Henny.
What I'm most optimistic about is seeing that there's a movement, of people who care and are coming together, and it's a movement because we're talking about in people who the giving of their time, giving of really small dollar donations. I'm super impressed when someone is giving $10 a month, right, and giving of their time or making a phone call. Those kind of actions by more people is what creates that movement. Is that movement? I think I started with the positive. I don't want to end with a negative. So I think maybe I'm going to just leave. I mean, I'm going to leave it there.
I love it.
Okay.
That sounds good. Renee, how about you?
Yeah. Well, I'm optimistic that things are going to change. I'm hopeful that this will not last forever and a day. And those organizations that can pivot, constrict where they need to, expand where they can in terms of new services and new areas that you want to explore are going to be the survivors. So I'm hopeful that this too shall pass. It may take us a while, but we're going to be unstoppable and still standing. I do think we still have challenges ahead. There's a long road ahead of us. We're sitting here wondering whether resettlement will ever come back anytime really soon. So that's a challenge for all of us because we all believe in that work and that space. And so as things go by, with cuts in Medicare and Medicaid, that affects, services that we do with disabilities and mental health. And so I'm worried about some of the other challenges that will affect the healthcare well-being of some of the folks that we serve. But I am not a pessimist. Our jobs are to navigate diversity and challenges and just take it one day at a time and one step at a time and be hopeful that this too shall pass. I do want to show something. Anne mentioned this word. This is something I keep in our lobby. When you mentioned joy, and I'm going to try to find one and send it to both of you. I'll see where it goes.
I love that.
You mentioned joy, and so this is what's in our lobby. So when I go up the stairs and get in my office, this is the first thing that I see: is that it's a joy to serve.
Excellent. And I apologize for keeping, but as I'm looking at a clock in 30 seconds, what are your closing thoughts for us?
I'm really excited by the possibilities. Some out of chaos often comes really new things, really great pivots, new ideas. This is where my wheelhouse, it's where I love to live. And I hate that there's chaos, but there are ways that we can do this so much better. And for our clients, for our residents, for our students, there are definitely ways to make this just something really bright and shining in a way that it hasn't before. So I'm going to leave it with that. I am worried about a lot of stuff, but joy, right? We're gonna look at those joyous, positive moments that we can create going forward.
I appreciate that so much. To all of you, we've hit our mark, so I got to get us out of here. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and Doug, Renee Hardman, and Annie Nior. Such a great discussion today. We appreciate your time so much. Thank you very much to our attendees who listened in and submitted some great questions. Thank you to our sponsors, ITC Midwest for the event and Four Oaks Family and Children's Service for the track specifically. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it, and thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Pleasure.